able to run ads for the census on Facebook, which involves some steps in compliance, and you won't really be able to do anything on the advertising or creative side until you get this kind of special form of approval, which we'll talk about. And then we're going to spend some time actually creating a campaign together so that you can see what that process is like, and that once you're verified and able to run this sort of ad, that you will have already kind of gone through the process. So that is the gist of what we'll be covering today. So let's dig in. I have a couple of slides for us before we actually just head right to Facebook and start looking at some stuff there. So let's go to a different window that I have, which is this one, and talk about what we're going to talk about a little bit more. I have the times wrong here, but the hour time limit is still the same. I want to make sure that we understand first in just a moment exactly what I mean by like the Facebook ad universe. It can be pretty confusing at first, but anytime you run an ad on Facebook, you're basically setting up three different components. You're setting up a campaign, an ad set, and an ad. And you want to make sure that you have pretty clear in your mind before you get started what your campaign objective is going to be. And there are lots of different objectives that you can have for your campaign on Facebook, but we're going to focus on the traffic objective. So just kind of keep that in mind. Is my best recommendation at 12 days left to count is that we focus on traffic ads to my2020census.gov. And so, you know, you can look at the other type of campaign objectives, but just know that that's kind of my best advice, is that we focus on traffic to my2020census.gov. But as you become more familiar with Facebook ads, then feel free to experiment with others, but we'll mostly focus on that traffic objective today. Whenever you determine I think this is a question we get a lot from people whenever they're new to Facebook advertising, is like, how much do you have to spend? And the reality is, like, you can spend as little as $5 and spread it out over the course of a month, if we had a month left to count. And all that really means is that you're reaching less people, because on you know, the campaign side, you get to decide not only what your budget is, but whether you want that to be for the day or whether you want that to be for the lifetime of your campaign. And so you may want to start a campaign today that is, you know, going all the way to September 30th, and you know that no matter what, you really only have $30 to spend. That's perfectly fine. It's going to split that $30 out over the next 12 days. And Facebook, one of the things that makes it so great is that once you put in your audience, how much you want to spend, how long you want it to run, then it will decide who the best times to show the ad to people, the best people to show that to based on their Facebook activity, how often they use it, other ads that they respond to, or other content they engage with. So just know that the big decision you have to make whenever you're starting is what you want the outcome of your campaign to be. We want it to be clicks. Just, there's no time to waste. We got to get straight to my2020census.gov and get people to, you know, go and say, hey, have I done this yet? Have I seen this before? Or did I already respond to the census? And know how much you want to spend now through September 30th. Then you also decide your ad set. I won't explain too much about that right now because we're going to be creating one of those ad sets together, including an audience. But that's whenever you decide basically who your ad is going to reach. And then the last thing is coming up with your actual ad, your ad creative. And that's pretty easy too. What makes that process even easier is that what we'll be doing today and what you can do whenever you are setting up your own Facebook ad campaigns is just use our toolkit. It has copy and it has graphics that are ready to go for you to just kind of put onto a Facebook ad creative whenever you come to that. So I just wanted to kind of start teaching you some of that language in case you're newer to it. And the second most important thing to know, I will say, is that unfortunately, and I know that you are all very familiar with this, we know that the census is not a political issue. It is something that affects us all. It is a constitutional mandate. However, according to Facebook, then it does fall under the category of issues, electoral, or it's issues electoral or I think causes ads. We'll see it in just a moment. But the reality is that I don't know if any of you are aware at all, but in 2016, then there may have been some, kind of stuff happening with Facebook advertising and our civic and electoral process. And so for that reason, Facebook is subjecting any ad that may remotely resemble a political cause, political advocacy, to an extra layer of scrutiny. Basically, what they're trying to make sure of is that whoever is running an ad that has something to do with, being an American or civic engagement or elections, that there is a real verifiable person behind that ad campaign. And you cannot run these ads until you've been verified. And when I say verified as a person, then you'll see we'll go through these steps and I'll show them to you. You will actually have to provide a copy of your ID. You will have to put in contact information. You'll have to get verification codes and all of that sort of stuff. So in the best case scenario, I will say I have seen people be able to go through that process within a day and be able to run, ads that very same day after a couple of hours. In the worst case scenario, I have seen that take a couple of weeks, but we're going to go ahead and hope that for the best case scenario in this case. I will say that we know of some people who have gone through this process to get verified for these issues ads recently, and it has happened very, very quickly. And those are people who are doing it for census advertising. So we'll go through that process in just a little bit. Like I said, the rest of our hour after that will really be dedicated to creating our actual campaign. Just to kind of pause here, then we also know that, Facebook is just this huge wide world that has its own terminology. And if you, really want to start from the very beginning and get familiar with Facebook advertising, in more time than we can really spend here. Or if this is a strategy that you think you might want to use for engagement and advocacy and other things, maybe even in the 2020 elections, then you may want to spend some time going through these great kind of primers on Facebook advertising. They are really the best guides. One is directly from Facebook. The other one is from Ad Espresso, which is a little branch of Hootsuite. But they're the best, most comprehensive guides to Facebook advertising. It may be more information than you really need to know, but particularly with the Facebook advertising online courses from Facebook themselves, then they do a really good job of just making it kind of searchable and troubleshooting. I've used that guide a lot, and that's the first bullet that we have up there. I will say that I have not encountered this over the last couple of weeks of supporting some people who have been doing some Facebook advertising, both for Get Out the Vote and Get Out the Count. But earlier in the pandemic, we did see something that said ad reviews delayed due to coronavirus. And whereas normally you can have an ad approved within about 4 hours, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes 1 hour, we were seeing that in March and April. I remember we did some test ads whenever we were doing our Pivoting to Digital organizing series in March, or rather in April, that we were seeing our ads delayed, several days. That isn't really happening now, but I think what I would say at this point is, it could be happening. We may see an increase in advertising for the census and for Get Out the Vote. And so I would, kind of plan. The reason I'm saying this is because, for example, in our toolkit, we have some graphics that say 12 days left to be counted in the 2020 census. I probably wouldn't use artwork like that. I would come up with a message that I wouldn't say, hey, we have, 12 or 11 days to count, or tomorrow is the last day, because you just don't really know when that's going to get approved. And so I would try to keep it as evergreen as possible, as evergreen as something can be for 12 days, so that you don't have to kind of adjust your ad and then have to go back to the review process. Okay. So let's see what we have in our chat box before I jump into our, let's see. I am sharing slides. Oh no, it says screen sharing is paused. Y'all didn't see any of the slides that I was looking at just now. Can y'all see my screen now? It's like a split screen of some stuff.
Yes, I can see it now. And frankly, Erin, I thought there was something wrong with my screen. I didn't realize it was universal. So sorry about that.
Oh, it was full screen on my screen like I was sharing, but in any case, what we just looked at, you didn't need to have slides for that. I'll go back very quickly and just say this is what we were looking at for our schedule for today. These are the links that I was talking about just here. And thank you so much, Maria, for putting that in the chat box. And oh, it keeps pausing. I don't know why that's happening. I'm not quite sure why that's happening. Katie, will you please make me co-host? I wonder if that has something to do with it. Okay, let's see if this solves our issue here. And let me stop and then start sharing again, see if that helps, because now we really do need to see my screen. Do. Okay, I'm gonna watch very closely and make sure that we can still see my screen over the next couple of minutes. Okay, and then this is just the caveat that I was mentioning about ads being delayed due to coronavirus. But for now, let's just dig right into Facebook. So I'm going to Facebook Fresh. And I am going to show you what I think is just the fastest way to get to the ad center. So let's say I'm doing some Facebook advertising for Texas Counts. What I can do is just go to my page, and if I am an admin or an editor or a contributor of my page, then off to the side, whenever I open up my Facebook page, I'll see something called the Ad Center. Now I can go there, and we'll return there, but for right now, I want to make sure that we cover that very important aspect of advertising for Get Out the Count, and that is making sure that we're approved to run these issues electoral ads. So I'm going to go to settings, page settings, and then it's called issue electoral or political ads. Okay, here it is. So you see issue electoral or political ads, and you get this kind of this screen that's going to take you through the steps to get verified to run issue electoral or political ads. Now the steps for you may be a little different. I can say you can do all of this in one sitting, and then you just kind of wait for your approval. One step that we'll kind of miss out on is verifying you personally, because like I said, you do have to be verified personally to run these ads. Now, if you are maybe doing some work for your organization, but you don't want to be the person who is on record as the official American behind these ads, and you need to have someone else do that for your page, that's perfectly fine, but that does complicate things a little bit, I'll say. And so I might even just kind of share this presentation or share this information with somebody if they're going to be, the person of record who's responsible for these ads. Granted, I will say it never really shows up anywhere. So, if I'm running this ad for Texas Counts, it would never really say that Aaron Flores is the person who's responsible for this content. It's just more of a compliance thing for Facebook, if anybody ever really needed to know. So you'll see that I went to issue electoral or political ads, and then it sent me to this page on the business manager. And we're just going to write or go through all of these questions, and they make it pretty self-explanatory. So it says here what you'll need to do. And like I said, I have already gone through this process before of confirming my identity, submitting my ID, confirming my location, just to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like. Let's go back to the slides really quickly, and I'll show you some of the questions that I answered whenever I got prepared to do this. It's going to make me turn on two-factor authentication on my phone with Facebook. I do have to verify my primary country location, and then I do have to show a copy of my ID. So just kind of be prepared to have all of that in the mix whenever you're going about this verification. And they're going to email you a code, yada, yada, yada. So after you do that, then what they want you to do is to create a disclaimer, and that disclaimer will show up. Some of you may have seen this already. We're already in the, getting deeper and deeper into election season. And so I know we're seeing a lot of political ads right now, but this is that disclaimer that we now have after the 2016 election cycle and 2018 election cycle, where it says paid for by, and you want to make that as clear as possible. And it doesn't necessarily, well, let's just go through it together, and then I'll explain kind of what the implications are of that. So I clicked that button to create a disclaimer option. Now, chances are that a lot of us will end up choosing this other option. So, for example, and I don't know that anybody is terribly familiar with the structure of the Texas Counts campaign, but Texas Counts campaign is just a campaign, and it is, the lead partner organization in the campaign is Every Texan, but we don't want to put Every Texan as the as paid for by Every Texan in this case. And so some of you may be in a similar situation where, you're really conducting census activities. Maybe your page, which is like Northeast Texas Counts, is like the name of your census campaign, and you want to advertise from that, but you don't necessarily want to attach it to another organization, and that's fine. But for that reason, you don't want to use this tax registered organization option. You want to use other here at the bottom. If you are a government organization, lovely. I see, Maria's here, and Maria, I don't know that SWART would really be considered a government organization for these purposes either. And I almost feel like that would just subject you to, a higher level of scrutiny on such a short timeline. And so I don't even know that in a case like Maria Camacho's, where she works for a regional transportation authority, that you would select government organization. So I think for almost all of us, then other is going to apply. So let's just go through those steps right now. And I'll do this for the Texas Counts campaign. So we would call ourselves Texas Counts. And just for the sake of brevity, I'm going to put in my address. Just to give you a preview of what sort of stuff you'll have to do. And you don't, all of this optional stuff, I cannot say that it adversely affects your ability to get verified. What really matters is that you just go through all of these steps to ultimately get to a disclaimer that is going to say, we could use Texas Counts, I could use Every Texan's address, I could use my personal cell phone number, I can use a generic email address as long as I have access to that email address, info@texascounts.org, and then ultimately create the disclaimer to say organization name, whatever the organization name is, that the ad is paid for by that organization. I will go ahead, and I really want y'all to see some of these steps, so I'm going to go ahead and just keep on down this path. If Jamie or Robin might do me the favor of reading me some questions while I'm doing this, so that we can kind of keep, answering questions while we're doing this kind of tedious stuff.
Jamie and Aaron, I'll jump in real quickly. Raphael had mentioned earlier that Facebook had rejected a Sesame Street but did approve Yo Cuento. And Raphael, I wonder, can you unmute yourself and tell us a little bit about that while Aaron's doing this?
Can you hear me?
We can
Yes.
hear you.
Yes, I kind of helter-skelter went to what Aaron is doing, and I got very frustrated, and I, just for the hell of it, submitted I am a Texan Yo Cuento, and that went through. So rather than go through all this pain, I've just been using that ad with the info on the comment. I use some boilerplate language from the Hágase Contar campaign with the internet site and the English, and then I kind of did a little twist on the Spanish. I said, "Oh, llamar en español," and then I give the Spanish number. That has worked, but I am going to give it one more try, so
That's
I can.
Great. So they didn't tell you exactly why the ad was rejected or nobody tried?
No. They did at some point me to this process, and I think I gave up and probably did not get as far as the disclaimer part.
I see.
But I submitted my grandmother's name, my parents' name, their social security number. I'm kidding, but that's what it felt like.
I mean, it is quite a lot of information that they ask you, and so I'm surprised they don't. Um,
And I kept
okay, I
putting
just got my
notes. I'm
verification.
not a political organization. I'm actually helping the U.S. government. So, but that
Right.
didn't go too far.
It doesn't go too far, right? And so believe me, if we could get away with, running ads that where they didn't pick that up and reject them, I mean, really, it's about 80% of the time. I would say that with that other one that you had go through, then I would consider that a lucky break because for the most part, they're always going to capture this sort of stuff. And as you can see, having gone through these steps here to do the disclaimer, I mean, as long as I kind of know what the, parameters are and what I can choose, I think that other option is very powerful for us. You'll notice they didn't even really tell me that, to specify what kind of organization I am as an other organization. They didn't ask me to specify that I'm a, grassroots campaign or a coalition of nonprofits and agencies or anything like that. And then we get to this wonderful screen, and I just wanted to have that sense of accomplishment of us getting to this point where we can say they're reviewing our disclaimer to show you all that it really and truly is that easy. The other thing I will say is at that point, then the other can of worms that you really open with this, and thank you once again, Raphael, that was a wonderful example of kind of like, just trying to just get it going without taking these steps. The other thing that is quite tedious, but pretty easy in that you only have to do it once, is this ad account creation or linking. And so I will show you where you can create your ad account, but I already happen to have like a billion ad accounts that I'm connected to. And you have to be sure and link that disclaimer to this ad account that you create where they want to make sure, since you're saying this ad was paid for by Texas Counts, then your ad account, just so we all know, is where you're saying, Texas Counts is paying from, right? And so I just happen to have an ad account for, myself. And that's part of their review process is they're saying, okay, this person who, is confirmed to run ads says they're running ads that are paid for by, this organization. And he's going to be paying for them out of this ad account. I have never now come across a situation since I've been personally verified where they have said, hey, your ad account doesn't really match up with who your disclaimer is saying you're paying for. And so I really don't understand how Facebook decides what's going to pass muster or not. But alternately, you'll see what I could have done is, and this may be something that you would want to do anyway, because you would be, you know, setting something up new for probably your organization, then I have also created one for Texas Counts. Since in my ad account, I do advertise for a couple of different pages, then maybe this would be a case where I would want to just set up a brand new ad account. But I think what's most important, what I was trying to show you here, is that that's an important step. Your disclaimer won't be reviewed unless you select an ad account to link it with. I just like the way this Texas Counts advertising ad account looks, so I'm going to keep it that way. Okie dokie. Now we don't have to wait for our verification to come through, because you'll see these, create a disclaimer, link an ad account to disclaimer, and assign a page owner. Those aren't complete yet. The very last thing that we'll have to do to get compliant, I'll show you, is also in our page settings. And that is, let me go back to...
And Aaron, while you're doing this, can I jump in for just a second?
Absolutely.
So our team shares the info@Texas Counts email address. And so while Aaron was going through this, he put that email address in as part of the verification process. And so we got an email from Facebook that said, please confirm this email for your Facebook authorization. And then they give a code. And so just a reminder, and I know that Aaron touched on that, but just a reminder to use an email account for which you have immediate access, or a partner or colleague has immediate access, because they're going to do that verification. They want to make sure you are who you say you are, or in this case, Aaron and I are who we say we are. and to be able to put that code in.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Robin, for pointing that out. And the last thing that you'll come across, and you may find this out during the verification process or whenever you try to run your first ad, is they want to make sure that the page owner is a business. That in Facebook, whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're a campaign like we are, you know, whether you're just a person who, you know, manages a lot of Facebook advertising or something, they call everybody a business. And so you will have to create a business who owns your page. Some of us who are familiar with kind of like the very early forms of Facebook pages remember that it was people who owned Facebook pages. Now there's been this long process to transition that to having them all be owned by businesses. And so in a little while, we're going to go back and jump into the ad center, and I'll give you a little heads up about what that looks like. So again, everything that we just covered, and then a little bit about creating the business and the ad account, like that is all in all, it's going to take up about an hour and a half of your time. And we are going to go through most of those steps together, but for creating a business and an ad account, you'll just want to do some of that on your own. But again, can't get around doing it without, or can't get around not doing it in order to run Facebook ads. Okay, so let's go back to our main page. We've already gone through all of that necessary compliance verification, and now we can dig into the ad center. So let's go, and rather than use some of this stuff, I want to get you all familiar with the actual, you know, not this form of the ad center, but how the ad center looks on Ads Manager. And so I did that kind of quickly, but you know, you can click Ads Ad Center, and then it'll give you this very small, you know, kind of barely noticeable link to the Ads Manager. But ultimately, that's where I think you should go. I think that's the most useful place to go. And then we'll see some of that familiar terminology that I just covered. And before we dig into that, I'm just going to show you this last bit of like business settings that you may need to have set up. Chances are, if you've created your Facebook page in the last, I would say, 3 years, if you created your Facebook page in the last 3 years, chances are you already are set up as a business. And that's another reason I don't want to spend too much time actually setting up a business with you all. And we just don't even know it. They set it up for us automatically, and we're already good to go in that respect. And so just in case you happen to have a Facebook page that's been around a little bit longer, then I will say you go to your ads manager. You'll see that I had clicked the settings here. And then once I click the gear for the settings, then up at the top, these shortcuts, I can go to my business settings. So right now, I think I happen to be in the business that is called Renee Aaron Flores or whatever, but oh gosh, sorry, I clicked away too fast. The business that is Renee Aaron Flores, but you'll also see that I had a Texas Counts one up there as well. Oh God, I keep slipping away from that. Okay. In any case, moving on, because I'm getting concerned about time and I really want us to get this going. Of course, as always, you can kind of reach out to us with any questions. I think I may have mentioned this the first time we did our Facebook advertising kind of webinar, but everybody's setup will be a little different based on when you created your Facebook page, if you've ever done any advertising before, if you already have an ad account set up, that sort of stuff. And so I try to avoid going down any rabbit holes where our situations may be vastly different. And I will say that if you're starting everything new, like, you know, running a new ad or running an ad for the first time from like boosting a post or something like that, Facebook does make it pretty self-explanatory just to run a Facebook ad. It's the, you know, nitty-gritty of this issue's electoral and political ads that I wanted to make sure we spent some time on. So I am going to go load the Texas counts. Let's see. Where is it? Let's go back here this way, Ads Manager. And so before we start creating our very first ad, now that we've taken care of all of that housekeeping, let's see what other questions we have. This is a wonderful natural break. Oh, we got a lively discussion happening here in our chat box. We answered Raphael's question or talked through his scenario where he had an ad rejected. Elena had asked if what we were talking about had to do with the district judge decision on the census memo, I believe you're referring to. No, Elena, we were just talking generally about the compliance related to Facebook advertising for issues, electoral or political causes. Unfortunately, Facebook does consider census advertising and get out the count advertising to be political or issues based, even though we know that it is not. And thank you for answering our question. Katie there. Let's see if we have any others. Okay, Maria asks, in our company account, our tech did adjustments, but on her personal account, she does mostly shares. She did receive a notice from Facebook. Okay, that's great. Thank you so much, Maria. All right, so now let's go to, I need to switch my business to Texas Counts so that we can pull up the Texas Counts ad account that I had selected, which is linked to my disclaimer. And I think it'll let me get away with going through and creating this ad, even though we've never used this ad account before, other than just for examples like this. And so I'm hoping that we can go through the entire process. There just may be a point where I have to pause and like put in some payment information or something like that. So you'll see right here at the top, because we have never actually run an ad from the Texas Counts campaign, then it does ask us this again: does your business Texas Counts focus on politics or advocating for issues of national importance? And we will just have to answer yes. And that is true. We are advertising about the census, which is of national importance. So here we go. We're going to do that thing that I was telling us about and create a campaign. Now, this is where we're going to set our objective. Remember that my very best advice to you is to run this type of ad. The objective right here being traffic, and that we just send traffic to my2020census.gov. And the way I see it, getting likes and shares and comments and everything like that on a post is not what we want to do with just 12 days left. We want to send people straight to the census website and see if they have completed it. It's a little hard to see, but at the bottom you can start to name this sort of stuff. And so I'm going to call this final get out the count advertising to, and you want to do yourself a favor if you're setting up a couple of different campaigns, maybe with different budgets, different audiences, maybe you do want to try an ad that is just for engagement. Then you want to make sure that you're doing yourself the favor of setting up a name that's intuitive. Facebook does sometimes come up with like generic names, but that makes it really hard to keep track. So I would call this my final get out the count advertising to get traffic to census site. Oh, my computer is being a little slow over here. And we might as well just go ahead and create the ad set while we're here. Remember that in the ad set, and they do give you some helpful tips down here, that's where you determine your audience, placement, schedule, and spending. So I'm just going to say that we are going to do targeted outreach to 77009. Previously, and if we had time, I was just going to revisit the Census 2020 hard to count map from CUNY and show, well, I might as well show it briefly. I'm going to talk about it long enough. I was just curious, I always come back to my neighborhood, which is this area in the middle called the Houston Heights. And we're doing okay. We're doing okay whenever it comes to self-response. But if I look over on the, that's all the 77008 zip code. But if I look to neighbors to the east, the 77009 zip code, I see that they're a lighter blue, which puts them in about 50 to 50 something percent self-response. And so we've talked about the many ways you can kind of figure out who is hard to count in your community, many ways to use this map. Of course, Dr. Lila Valencia and the Texas Demographic Center have just put out this amazing toolkit that we promoted in last week's newsletter, or rather dashboard that we put in last week's newsletter, that shows kind of at the county level how different census tracts are responding. And so any number of tools you can use to decide who your audience is. We'll actually create the audience in just a moment, but for now, we're just kind of deciding an intuitive name for our ad set. So this is going to be called Targeted Outreach to 77009. And then we'll just call this posts in the ad creative settings. We'll just call this graphics from Texas Counts. Maybe I wanted to have one campaign going where I'm doing the same thing, getting traffic to the census site, trying to reach out to 77009, but I want to know if the graphics from Texas Counts are more effective, or I want to know if the graphics from the US Census Bureau are more effective, for example. And maybe from the Hágase Contar campaign or something like that. That's the reason that you would maybe set up two different ads and name them accordingly, because this is actually talking about the creative, what you're saying and what you're showing. So having determined those objectives, we can just continue right along. So let's let Facebook get started on creating that campaign. And starting at this point, I'm just going to give you again my most succinct decisions and my best thinking on what you can do to get an ad running, up and running basically today or tomorrow as soon as you're verified, that I think is probably what we really want to accomplish at this stage of the game. So I had already named my campaign, and then remember, we're running a special ad category, whether we like it or not. We will have to define at the campaign level that this is social issues, election, or politics. And then whenever I select that, you'll see that they bring up my confirmation personally, but then also they want me to choose a page that is going to have the disclaimer. I'm linking this right now, but the reality is I can't go the whole process until that verification is complete. I can get everything else ready, but I don't think that it's going to actually let me, run this ad until that, or I know it's not going to let me run that ad until this review process is complete. So we'll let that load, but I'm going to keep talking about some other settings. So once you get the notification on Facebook that you've been approved to run ads, then you would just come right back here and link it to Texas Counts, but we're still waiting on all of that sort of stuff. And so we won't be able to really, oh, hang on, create a disclaimer. Manage disclaimer. It's still in review. That's why we're not able to do this. I got so excited. So we would come back to this whenever our disclaimer is complete and that verification is complete. And that's really just a simple matter of saying, link page from selecting the page that we have admin control over. Okay. I won't talk about A/B testing too much. That can be very powerful. If we had all the time in the world to get out the count, and in the space of this webinar, then we would talk about maybe, the different ways that you can test messaging, test an audience, that sort of stuff. But for now, I'm just going to say, we can skip over everything else in this. The campaign details, the A/B test, and the campaign budget optimization, save those defaults, don't think about them, let's just move on. I think they're a great choice to just get the campaign started. So that was really everything we needed to do to set up the campaign itself. Now notice, if I had not chosen that campaign objective to get traffic, I would not be able to change it. And so this has happened to me before, where I choose the wrong objective, and then I go through all the process of coming up with my ad and everything like that, and then you can't change it, unfortunately. And so you really want to hyper focus on that campaign objective. Again, I say just keep it as you want to send traffic to a website. Who knows? Maybe you do want to send traffic to your website, and it really is just a matter of, or to someone else's website beside my2020census.gov. I'm sure there are many reasons that we could think of that you might want to do that. But it's pretty easy at the ad stage to choose where your ad actually lands. Just know that that's possible. I'll show you where to do that, but I really do think that we just want it to go to a website and straight to the source. This is also where we can determine our budget and schedule. Before we do that, I want to tell you about this fairly new feature of Facebook advertising that I don't know how much I like it yet because I just started using it myself. But I'm going to go ahead and show you all how to use it because it just kind of helps us. I don't know, it helps us just not have to think too hard whenever it comes to the ad creation stage and the next step. And with the toolkit that we have especially, then I think that this dynamic creative could actually end up getting us a better result, because what it's really doing for us is allowing us to just upload a bunch of assets and variations, whether that be the text that's on the ad or the image that's displayed. And then it starts to kind of learn what people are engaging with best. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn that on, and I would recommend that you turn that on. Why they actually have you toggle it here, I'm not sure, because it doesn't come into play until you're coming up with the ad at the next step. So like I said, determining your budget is pretty, and I know I'm going very fast, everybody. I'm just trying to give us some time for open-ended questions at the end is my goal. Back to the budget. Like I said, you can set a daily budget that ends at a defined time, or you cannot have an end date and just kind of keep having it running. I think really what we want to do here is just set it and forget it. We're doing so many different things to get out the count right now, and so we probably don't want to have to be watching our Facebook ads every single day. And so what I might do is just, come up with a set of ads, an amount of money that I would like to spend all the way up until September 30th at 11:59 p.m. And not have to, revisit this. If I know that let's say in this scenario, I was going to end up doing a couple of different ads to different zip codes, and maybe in 77009, I would only want to spend $100 from now until September 30th. This is also the area where you really get to determine who your audience is. Now, we spent actually a pretty significant amount of time coming up with our audience in our, I believe it was our 4th installment of the Pivoting to Digital series. And we created a targeted audience then, whenever that was in April, y'all. And it was a very different landscape. We didn't have just 12 days left. And so we could have been very targeted about our audience and very intentional and thoughtful about crafting targeted, hyper-targeted messaging to audiences. At this point, I would just cast a very wide net. There are many powerful ways that you can target audiences in Facebook, but hard to count or hasn't responded to the census really isn't one of them. And so for right now, I think the smartest thing to do is just to focus on low response zip codes, low response counties, if they're particularly smaller counties, using the hard to count map. Facebook doesn't really have anything that's they don't allow you to target by census tract, but what they will do is, if you're looking at the Texas Demographic Center dashboard, or if you're looking at the hard to count map and you see a census tract that is just like appallingly low in response, then you could come to your Facebook map and you could decide to drop a pin. And why don't I start to show you some of that sort of stuff. You can drop a pin that you can, maybe send out a mile or two that's really going to end up being, approximately that census tract. Here we go. So to start doing that, I typically ignore the custom audiences sort of deal and just jump right to location. Because like I was saying, we can either decide right now that we only want to target this particularly low response zip code of 77009. Or another setting too is we just to get the most bang for our buck, and because we are trying to reach the person one in every household, I would only do people living in this location because we're trying to get households there, right? So make sure you change your setting to people living in this location, put in your zip code. Like I said, alternately, what we could decide to do if we were really good at identifying low response census tracts is drop a pin. And then here, let me clear this out so we can do that process together. Because what if we were to decide that even though that was all the 77009 zip code, and where's my pin? Oh, how weird. It won't let me drop my pin. Please add a location or use a custom audience. Okay, I won't get hung up on that. The reality is we can just put in the zip code, and we know that it's a low response zip code, and just be happy with that. So we've determined our location. Again, they're going to give me a disclaimer that we can only target our authorized country. That's really fine. The census is for everybody, and so I would choose to keep this age and gender to all, or the widest kind of parameters. You can't advertise to anyone under 18. And like I said, I just don't think we're at a stage in the game where it really makes sense to do any form of detailed targeting. So I would just restrict it to the zip code. We did cover that just a little bit in our Pivoting to Digital series. And so in our recap, we'll be sure to include a link to that because we did talk about detailed targeting then. You can also decide that you want to run the ad to whether you're including people only in a certain zip code or not, to people who you're connected to. You can't do your friends, but you can do people who like your page, or people who like your page and friends of people who like your page. But I really think that we want to focus on geographical targeting in this in this case. All of these defaults after that, after you decide your zip code, your city, your county, or drop a pin, I did recently use this feature of add locations in bulk. If maybe there's someone in your area who has a bulk list of zip codes that they want to target, or I'm trying to think of what other, it does take like municipalities and all that sort of stuff. So maybe you're in a hard to count county, and some of the municipalities in that county are, very low response and some aren't. And if you had a list of those, then you could just go to this add locations in bulk and go through the process of selecting and uploading those locations. I don't think anybody has this level of data, but if you had addresses of people who you knew hadn't responded, then you could conceivably upload those too. I would assume that the Census Bureau is at this point uploading addresses of people who have not responded and maybe targeting ads to them. I would hope they're doing that. Okie dokie. After that, you really don't have to worry about anything else in creating your ad set. Like I said, automatic placements are spot on. The optimization for ad delivery is link clicks. You don't have to worry about anything like that. You'll see that based on the budget that I put in, and based on the zip code that I want to target and the time frame of this ad, on the right hand of the screen, Facebook is telling me exactly how many people I can expect to reach each day and how many link clicks I might get, on the low end and on the high end. Now, sometimes we may decide to kind of tweak our audience to get a better result. We may decide to use that kind of estimate to increase our budget or make a case for increasing our budget. But just know that, a sweet spot, as Facebook sees it, is this kind of green in the odometer here. Okie dokie. I'm going to go right on to Ad Creative and try to cover that in about 5 minutes so that we can take some questions for 5 minutes, because I think that part is actually pretty easy. So Here is where our toolkit will come in super duper handy because you really don't have to come up with anything fresh. You can literally just copy and paste from our toolkit. I'm already getting some errors on here that have to do with my not being verified yet to run these ads from Texas Counts, or rather Texas Counts is not verified with its disclaimer. I have already created this disclaimer, but it's not showing up because it's not approved. So we can just ignore all of this, or rather we can ignore this disclaimer error. I will say that for Instagram, then you can either use your selected page, or if you have an Instagram account connected already to your Facebook page, maybe you automatically cross post from Instagram into Facebook, then you can select that here too. If you don't have an Instagram account, then your ads will still show up on Instagram, but they're just going to end up linking back to your Facebook page. They'll show up in people's Instagram feed and in the Explore section, but they're just going to take them back to Facebook. Okie dokie. So whenever it comes to ad setup, then like I said, all you really have to do is select a couple of images. We haven't made a lot of like videos for the census. In our toolkit, we, as you know, focus on graphics. And so that's why I'm just going to kind of go and upload a bunch of graphics from the toolkit rather than focus on some of the other types of creative you can do. But just very quickly, let's go and just pick a couple of our recent graphics that we have. Let's see, I want to make sure I'm selecting the Facebook sizes. So let's go and grab, oh, that's all from our countdown. Let's choose this one and this one. Oh no, that's not a good example. Let's do this one. And what was this? Oh, that's a cute one. And we'll do this one right here. Okay, so those are more regionally focused, but just by way of example, I wanted to show you that you could go into our toolkit, download the images that you think would, be a good message to send right now, and just take some of this copy from our toolkits. And then just start to create these kind of dynamic campaigns that Facebook will really, kind of do all of the heavy work for you in figuring out what your audience is starting to respond to best. You can select up to 10 images and Facebook will draw from those. And then whenever it comes to what you're putting in the ad, copy, what people see as the caption, then you can put in a couple of different options there. So you'll see, I'm going to turn the preview on just to show you kind of how I start to see things show up once I put in some copy. So you can add up to 10 images, 5 different captions, basically. The headline is what shows up next to the link. So we would make that something like, Texas needs you to complete the census today. Even though it says the headline is optional, I almost always include a headline whenever it comes to these traffic objective campaigns because I like the way that it shows up. It's basically what shows up right next to the button that is going to be learn more. Unable to generate a preview. Why, I wonder? I think it's just taking a long time. Display link is, even if I said that I want my people who click through on the ad to be able to go to my 2020census.gov, we could change what it says on top of that. Without the preview showing up correctly, then that doesn't really do us any good. But just know that all of this sort of stuff is optional, but I do think the headline is important. And really, honestly, that's it for coming up with your ad. We would put in a couple of more captions from the toolkit. I'm only showing you the different calls to action because I want to show you that I think learn more is really the best one for what we're trying to do. The call to action could be, send a message if you had changed that as your objective earlier, and it would go to a Facebook Messenger. But unfortunately, I really wish that there was something that was like complete the census, and I really wish the call to action button were customizable, but they're standardized, and I think that learn more is our best bet. My 2020 census, I'm just trying to figure out why this is not showing up. Crazy.
And Aaron,
Yeah.
There's a note and question from Julia in chat.
Yes.
Is now a good time to read it for you?
It will be in about 20 seconds. I'm just going to basically show how we would wrap up this ad. And I'll get to Julia's question in just 1 second, and I'll go read it in the chat box. But after you fill out this call to action, again, all of this is really nitty gritty. And then you have seen that all along the way, all of the edits that I've been making have been saving. And at this point, we would come back to publish. Now, if I hit publish right now, then it's just going to tell me all the errors that I had. And we went through all of this to also show you that this is going to automatically be the way if we don't have an ad account that we would set one up. Now, if you already have one associated with your page, or if you already have one associated with your business, then you would not have seen this. If I had continued going through those steps to create the ad account, or if I had already gotten our disclaimer approved and everything like that, then it would show me any other number of errors, like if I had a typo in my link and all that sort of stuff. But we know that if we try to click this right now, then we're just going to get error after error after error. Hopefully you won't run into the same thing. And whenever you hit publish, then you'll go into, instead of on the upper right hand side, you see it says in draft, it would go to in review. And like I said, there's no way to know exactly how long it'll take for your ad to be reviewed by Facebook. But in our best case scenario, we're hoping that our ad starts running to hard to count people in 77009 in about an hour or two. Okay, sorry about that, Ever. I just wanted to rush through that final bit so that we can stick around for as long as you need for questions. Okay, so here we go. Ever since Facebook shifted to its new interface during Boost Post, I have been unable to define the geographical audience to just the county or just the zip code without automatically adding a buffer of 25 miles. Julia, that is a wonderful, wonderful question. You'll notice that, yes, I didn't have us start doing the ads through Boosted Post because for whatever bizarro reason, and I've never been able to figure it out, then that is all they allow you to do whenever you're creating an ad from a Boosted Post. I will say, however, one thing you can do is if you have a saved audience, and let me see if it'll go back and let me save this audience that we just created. There are a couple of different ways that you can come about setting or creating an audience. It's, let's see, show more options. No, it doesn't let me save the audience from here. It lets me use a saved audience. But if you come back to the ads manager from the page like we started out to get here, I know I can't publish this, so I'm just going to close. Then remember we were at this screen with our campaigns, ad sets, and ads. Then what I can do here is come and actually manually create that audience and then save that audience so that if I find that I have a good audience that I know I want to reach in this final push, then I can boost a post, but as opposed to being restricted to geographically targeting like you were trying to, I can just use my saved audience. And so you could come in here and you guessed right, the level of detail that you're trying to get to narrow it down to a mile radius of a dropped pin in a hard to count census tract or a low response census tract or zip code. You can really only get that from creating the audience in the ads manager back here. What you would do is create a saved audience, low response, Houston zips, and go 77009, 77082, Oh, I'm sorry, it won't let me do that. I have to add them individually, 77009, yada, yada, yada. And it'll only pick those zip codes, or at this stage again, we can drop a pin. I think is it because I have my ad blocker on that it won't let me drop this pin? This is really bothering me. You won't have the same issues I have, Julia, because this is just something fluky with my device. But yes, to succinctly answer your question, to get that level of detail and not have to go out, plus or minus 25 miles, you have to create the audience here. All right. What other questions do we have? I believe that's all. And I think some people are starting to drop off. We have recorded this webinar. I know we sped through so much of this information. I will stick around for another couple of minutes in case anybody has questions, but I'll free everybody else to go and move on with your getting out the count efforts, because we know we're in final days. If you're anything like all of us at Texas Counts, so we know that you're really just feeling the heat and just wondering what can you do in these last couple of days. And so we are, here for you. Go through the process of getting verified. Let us know what kind of snags you hit. Go through the process of starting an ad. Let us know what kind of snags you hit. We may, opt to schedule some one-on-one time to answer your questions if they're pretty complicated, but that's just because we want to make sure that you absolutely have all of the support you need. Jeannie asked, where do you download the toolkit? It's on the Texas Counts website. That is correct. We link to it from the homepage, but I'm also going to pop the link to it in the chat box right here. We just really appreciate everybody being here, really. Any other questions? Thank you, Maria. Always nice to hear from you and see you, and thank you for all you do. Okay, everybody, I don't see any questions in the chat. I don't see anybody trying to unmute. Gracias a usted, Rafael. Then I'm going to end our meeting. We'll send a recap. We'll send the slides. And please, please, please reach out to us if you have any questions in these next 12 days, all the way up until the very end. We're here with you. All right. Thank you, Diana. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a great, great day.